Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and we're going to go over 5 different events that happened around the world for the English version of the One Piece card game that happened in this OP13 format. And I do kind of want to just kind of address the elephant in the room, where I've said this kind of previously. You guys might have noticed that I'm not making as much content for the One Piece card game right now, and honestly, it's only because there's not as much content to really make right now, right? We do have these 5 events, right? We had the Cartamachka Online Treasure Cup, Organized Play Events had a Treasure Cup and a Regionals, Games had an online treasure cup, and Pro Play Games had a Miami regionals as well, right? 5 really big events, but in these events we only had 9 different leaders top, right? You can see the pie chart image right now, right? It's mostly Ace, Emu, and Zoro. An example for the TAC Games online treasure cup, it is only those 3, and there's not a lot of variety even within these leaders right now, right? I do think this is a format where you can love it. I'm not saying that you can't enjoy this format, but for the content that I usually make, there's just not as much diversity or things to really talk about, right? Not only are the leaders really understood for them, but the deck list inside them are also incredibly understood, right? This is probably the most kind of player-focused meta that we've had right now. It's also kind of upsetting that sometimes it's kind of a dice roll on who wins the dice roll has more impact than a lot of other plays that you can have during a match, and that's just kind of tough to see at some times as well. So I hope you guys know that I am going to continue to support this game as much as I have in the last, since the release of this card game, right? This isn't going to go away anytime soon, but there's just like less to talk about right now. So that could also mean that I'm going to be talking about like OP14 stuff a little bit more, and of course I will keep the Eggman events deck list website as up to date as we can too. I'm not going to shirk any duties for that, but I hope you guys just understand that I can only make the same video going over Ace, Emu, and Zoro without losing my mind, and without you guys also just losing your mind saying like, oh, of course, yes, Emu is a very good deck right now, I see, thank you Eggman for the 3rd time. So I hope that's kind of understood. I do also want to celebrate the successes of people in these two. I don't want to be like, oh, of course they won because they played Emu. It's still very difficult to play this deck, especially when you're filled in a room with mirror matches and it's such a specific mirror match. I hope it's also understood that I want to celebrate the people who do get accomplishments with it. It's just like difficult to just do a lot of variety content with it because of kind of the solidity for it. So I hope that's all makes sense. I hope you guys know that you've probably seen me make a lot more Riftbound content, mostly just because there's just more to talk about with that game right now, but I am going to stay with One Piece. There's just a little bit less to talk about right now. So I hope that's understood. If you guys have any more questions or anything about that, you can let me know in the comments too, but I'm obviously going to stay with this game. Just don't be surprised if, again, there's going to be a little bit less content for this one. So anyways, if you guys are new to the channel though, we do make a lot of One Piece content, and if you guys want to hit that like and subscribe, it does help a lot. Also, if there's any of the deck lists you guys do want to go over, there will be found on my website, Eggman Events, which is linked in the description. We do have all of these events we're going to go over today. We have our deck list table, which has a lot of deck lists, not only from OP13 for us, but we do have some like Japanese OP13 events that Atrocious Jake has been helping out with, so I really appreciate his him helping contribute to this. He's also been adding the OP14 section for the website too, which we just opened up. So if you guys want any OP14 stuff as we look into the future, there's going to be a good amount of resources here, and you can check that out as well. So anyways though, we do have 5 events. I'm not going to go over all the leaders specifically for those, but again, like you can see, we have the organized play events, Edinburgh regionals, which did have a 10-24, 10 rounds of Swiss into a top 32 cut. We do have the Pro Play Games Miami regionals, which was 9 rounds of Swiss into a top 32 cut. I don't have the standings final for this event right now. I'll be updating this when I do, which will probably be a couple hours after this video comes out, and kind of why this video is a little bit later in the day release-wise than I normally do. I do know the winner for it is Goblin, and we will be going over their deck list in this video in particular, but I just don't know the top 32 from there, so I do apologize for not knowing that, but I do know that Emu did win this event. TAC Games Online Treasure Cup, we did have this one, 307 players, 8 rounds of Swiss. Thank you to Paul Basor for these deck lists and Jake for helping input them as well, and we did have Eugene win with Ace, and then we do have 2 more events. We have the organized play events Edinburgh Treasure Cup, where we did have Emu win this again with Frle and have a good amount of variety outside of this, right? We got 2 more leaders, at least compared to the 3-leader format we did have for the TAC one. And to wrap it up, we do have the Cartamachka Online Treasure Cup that happened this past Sunday. We do have a top 16 as well, with Emu, Ace, and Zoro taking up 14 of the top 16, with 2 spots of Teach and Silver's Rayleigh and Zoro winning this event event. So if you're keeping track, that's 3 Emu wins, 1 Ace win, and 1 Zoro win across these 5 events for this weekend. So honestly, if any other deck wins that isn't one of these 3, I think that's going to be a huge success for the player for it, because it's going to be very, very difficult to overcome just how powerful these decks are in this meta right now. So we are going to go over the top placing list for each one of these leaders though, and if you guys want to check out the timestamps, we're going to jump through them as well. I will be kind of a little bit like more overhead for some of these. Obviously you're going to see Emu, Ace, Zoro. There's not a lot to talk about, but I'll still do a little bit of talking in case you guys are interested in getting into these decks and kind of some interesting choices for it. But I'm going to be like incredibly honest with this. Emu is like the most cookie cutter deck I think we've seen in a really, really long time, right? These are 3 different finishes, and I know that we're going through them pretty quick, but you will see that they are playing all of the exact same cards and just some minor ratio differences, right? When you have to play like a mandatory 30 cards in this deck of 4 of each elder and then the 5 elders thing, you have to play the stages, you have to play the events, right? You don't really have that much choice for any of these. So that's kind of why they're just so solidified for it, right? The biggest changes are just your ratios of Shirahoshi, Saint Charlos, and Mojgard as well. And to be specific, this is Kevin's build right here. We've got Goblin's build right here, and we have Frle's version of it here as well. So again, it's just such like solidified position. I even like, I compare this deck to like Black and Yellow Luffy, which I know a lot of people have been playing previously, and that kind of has a lot of skills to transform into this deck. I do know that Goblin was playing it a lot, especially after Gecko Moria was being banned. He was trying it very, heavily to get some tops with it as well. So very kind of understood with kind of these formats where you kind of have these loop plays with putting out bodies and stuff and trying to get the most value of them as well. But like, it's just like, even in those decks, right? Even though when that deck was pretty understood, people did have some tech choices. There were some option cards, and there are new cards kind of entering rotation for this, but I just don't see it for Emu, right? Like, you just have so many cards that you have to put into the deck. The playstyle is moderately linear, right? There's a lot of just like, did you see Saturn on curve? Yes, no. That's like a really big decision for it. And then like, how many 5 elders were you able to, resolve in a game, right? I do think that the mirror match ends up being pretty complex, and when you're going to face a room where probably like 25 to 50% of your opponents are going to be Emu, especially in like a top situation, you do have to be really knowledgeable on what that looks like, because it's very different than any other matchup that you have to go for. So I do know that, again, like the deck lists for these are not very unique in their own way, but I do think that the play styles they are very unique. I do think that it's a great accomplishment to be able to get first place in any event, including this one. And it's going to be like, in a room full of emus, to say that you are the best emu of the weekend is a big accomplishment, right? When again, 20, 30, 40% of the room is emus, to say you're the best one of all of them, I think is a great accomplishment there. So here are the builds there for you guys. Congratulations to Kevin, Goblin, Frle, and all of our emu players from these events this weekend. So next up, we've got Eugene, who's able to get a first place finish with Ace. And there is like a little bit of wiggle room for Ace when it comes to deck building, right? I think it's pretty understood, like our 1-drops are pretty good with Izo, Otama, Garp, and Thatch. A lot of people playing Thatch as a way to be able to go down to 0 life, to be able to use your Gol.D.Roger kind of effect. So you play Roger early. If they don't answer it, you can Thatch go down to 0 and then get your, attacks in, which is really nice. Obviously, the combo with I Am Whitebeard with the new 10-drop has been fantastic. I did notice that not a lot of people were playing the Tax Whitebeard, where, that was the other 10-drop blue one that does prevent your opponent from attacking unless they discard 2. Most people were on the 9-drop Newgate. So that was a little bit of an innovation. I've been seeing at least a homogenization where less people were on the 10-drop, but they were just kind of on just the 9-drop as itself. There are some kind of tech options of like what 2Ks you run. I've seen some people play some Jozus. Atmos has been mostly a staple, but I've seen some people kind of take it out for the deck. The Uta 6-drop has been very good because it really quickly turns into the Uta 2-drop with its own effect, and just kind of the regular pieces from there. Radical Beam was like run at like 1 to 2 copies if it was run at all, but people can use this to be able to get out of a larger attack if they need to. Red Rock is a staple at like 2 to 3 copies that I saw pretty often, and just kind of the basic build for this. So I will say that Ace does have like a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to like atypical cards that you can choice add to the deck as well. Not many people were playing the 6-drop Yamato, but it was a choice option that I saw people add for it too. And it's just kind of in a spot where, it's pretty clear what the best cards for this deck are and what kind of support cards you want to do to maybe make some matchups a little bit easier and others maybe a little bit harder for it. But this is kind of like a pretty basic build of Ace, and I think this is a great one for anyone just trying to get into it. This is what you kind of have to like look forward to trying to build. build, and also if you're trying to play against it, these are generally the tools that they have for it. So again, this is Eugene's build, and congratulations for their first place with Ace. And to wrap up our trio, we do have our first place Sanji-kun, who was, I'd say, ironically playing Zoro, and we got a first place finish at the Cardamachka Online Treasure Cup. So there are some new cards for Zoro in this set, mostly the new Trafalgar Law, right? It's kind of replaced the 8-drop Mihawk that the deck was using in OP12. The fact that this comes out a little bit earlier, the fact that this deck has like so many good 5-drops, including like the Tashigi, being able to like recycle the Zoro is also very good. Also, you'll notice that this build is a little bit unique where we don't actually play the Cavendish. Instead, we are playing the Yukimaru here. So if this character is active, it cannot be KO'd by your opponent's effect. And when attacking, if you have a total of 3 or more, given Dawn Recipe to one of your opponent's characters with base cost of 6 or less. So I do think this is a really good tech card for the deck because it does mean that you have ways to rest blockers in like the Emu deck, right? Workery has a 4 cost. Also, Mars has a 6 cost. The fact that also like you don't have to like it's base cost for this one. You can't KO it if it's active, which means that Mars can't just come down and get rid of it too. So it's a really good tech add for specifically that matchup, and I can see why it's in a really good spot for that as well. So other than that, though, I think we do have some standard tools. 10-drop Shanks is, you know, obviously like a pretty great card when one it's slash type, so it's very searchable. We aren't also afraid to just put all of our Dawn onto Zoro for 1 turn anyways, so that's very good for us. We do have like Electrical Luna that has some chances to like rest some things, but honestly, I think this is a pretty solid build. I do like the tech add for it, and it's cool to see you get a first place finish as well. So this is the build from Sanji-kun. Congratulations for their first place with Zoro. All right, next up, we do have some other kind of leaders from OP13 that were able to get some finishes. So we do have Sabo and Gol.D.Roger. We're going to start with Sabo here. This is like one of my favorite decks to play right now, even though it can be like a little bit clunky, right? If you have 4 or more life cards, give this leader's minus 1k power, and also Dawn ×1. If your character with a cost of 8 or more, if you do have one with 8 or more, all your characters and leaders get the plus 1000 power. So this is on both players' turns. You know, there's just a lot of ways for this to kind of change the power of the leader. The fact that this is a 5-life leader that's multicolor is really interesting too. We've really only seen this like once before with like a Useless Kid leader too, so I think all of this kind of makes sense for it, right? We are kind of a bit of a combo deck where we do want to try to get out our 4-drops that pretend that they're 8 costs as soon as possible. We do have the new 6-drop Sabo, which is just fantastic for this deck. Being able to make your leader like a 7k aggressively for free every turn is really helpful, and the fact that we are like an 8k blocker in a lot of situations is very helpful as well. There is like the tech add of the 7-drop Monkey D. Luffy. Being able to use this to, you know, attack active cards is nice, and we're not really restrictive to what we're using. You know, this isn't like locked to anything either, and we do put a lot of cards into our trash, so getting the 7 to get the refresh isn't too outrageous for us too. We have access to the Stasi, we have the Gol.D.Roger, 8-drop Monkey D. Dragon, which can bring out the 6-drop Sabo is good too. I think all this kind of makes sense. So this is the build that we're looking at first. This is Elfuma's version of the build. We also do have the build here from Kaua, which I would say this is like a little bit more standard, right? There is like the options to play some defensive cards too, like the Hair Removal Fist, which I think both are playing in the Black Vortex. But I would say this is like the standard build that I would say 50 cards is like the first build that you play if you're interested in seeing what this deck kind of looks like. And then this one has like, again, a little bit more tech options. I think the Luffy is an interesting choice. And but again, it is pretty similar between the two. The other card to kind of mention is the 5-cost Sabo. Sometimes you do like need to get some recycle, and if you end up going first, this is a really good card to play on 5. I think most decks in this game like prefer going second in this meta, which makes it tough on like a dice rolling mechanic. But if you have some backup plays, if you end up going first with Sabo, this is really nice for it too. So I don't have really much more to say about this one. I do think Sabo's in a really fun spot. It's a really cool deck, and honestly, you're going to see like OP13, all the leaders are like viable in their own way, but it is a little bit eclipsed by just how good Emu and Ace are in this format in general. So again, these are the builds here from Elfuma as well as Kaua. Congratulations for their finishes with Sabo. The next up, we've got Gol.D.Roger, the king of the pirates here, and this is a deck that's like weirdly almost good in a lot of situations, right? It's going from like a moderately viable deck to a very viable deck with the release of one card that we're getting sometime in the next couple of weeks. It's kind of been jumping around on like the specific dates. I think like January is like the official one. So after a lot of like larger events that are happening for the European competitive season for it, but it's so close to being good, right? It's such a unique leader, right? The fact that it's a 7k base cost, the fact that it's a multicolor leader with 5 life, all of this is unheard of, right? Like this would almost be a better leader leader if it had no effect, which is kind of really funny. But this is just a leader that is kind of really ramped based. You are like having to face some kind of clunky turns for it, and we do kind of have 3 different builds that existed. So we have Zeus's build, we have the build here from Derpy, as well as the build here from Pandapunk. So you will notice that there are some pretty big similarities across these as well. You really just want to ramp to 10 as soon as possible, so you get your cards out. In lieu of the 8-drop Roger, a lot of people are just opting to play the 9-drop Newgate, which does kind of fit the niche a little bit. It's a little bit worse. It's not as searchable, and it does cost 1 more. So there are some turns where you could have played the Roger, but you couldn't have played the Newgate. You know what I mean? But it is still in like a pretty standard spot for it. So I think there are some decisions. Like I think the biggest one from this one is if we play the God Thread, which does offer some removal and some ramp, which is helpful. We have so many ways to ramp in this deck too, so it's not outrageous for us to be able to get to 10 quickly. The only issue is that the first turn that we go to 10, we're technically still at 9 because of the Gol.D.Roger effect with it, right? So if we can ramp to 10 before we get to our 10 Dawn turn, we can play something like Shanks or the 10-drop Gol.D.Roger, which is searchable in this deck off the 1-cost Shanks, which is really nice. That is really helpful, but other than that, we are kind of in this weird spot where, we kind of have to like spend an extra turn at 9 where other decks would be at 10 immediately. So I do like the addition of 8-drop Katakuri. This is, I think, a good leader to help us, play this card out. We do also have like the access to like the 6-cost Uta, because we do play some really big bodies out as well. And, red and purple has been like a pretty good like color combination historically, so there are some like good tools for it, and I did play like a lot of like the red and purple like Luffy leader as well, so you get a lot of like the synergies of what those cards are without the Gum Giant, which is a big miss, but this deck does still have a lot of power, and then just being a 7k base for like the second half of the game is really, really strong for it. So I do think it's kind of weird that sometimes this deck still, as a 7k leader with 5 life, you still sometimes just get aggroed down, which I think is a little bit weird to say in this format, but it is just kind of shows how aggressive this deck, this format can be, and how little a 7k leader is, in compared to like the history of what this card game looks like as well. So these are the builds. Congratulations to our Gol.D.Roger decks, and I do expect this to see a little bit of a bump in the next couple of weeks as we do get the promo, and that does kind of buff the deck as well. Next up, we've got Silver's Rayleigh here. So we've got technically 3 decks across 2 players. We do have Tetra, who was able to win, or no, not win, but do well in both the organized play events regionals as well as the Treasure Cup. And you'll notice that between the 2 days, they're like, I don't know if Brooke or Sanji's better, and they swap between the two of them but otherwise pretty similar. And we also do have Jansuko, our Justin, who's able to get a top 16 in the Cartamagica Online Treasure Cup as well. So, I will say that Silver's Rayleigh was also just an OP12 deck that had a really understood like 50 or like 45 cards. There's not that much differentiation between the two, but this is a deck that I think a lot of people played in OP12, and this dropped when OP13 came out, right? We do have like another red deck with Ace, right, but the playstyle is a little bit different, and I do think like it as like this kind of like medium-sized body deck where you just play out these attacks that you get a lot of aggressive 7Ks. There are a lot of decks that just still can't kind of handle that amount of pressure for it. So I know a lot of people still believe in this deck, and I'm really happy that they were able to sleeve it up and do well and prove that this deck is still viable in this meta as well. So I don't really have honestly a lot to say. I do like the one add of the Jinbei here. I've always kind of felt like this card's not terrible. The fact that you are able to boost it with your leader effect, the fact that you can make this a rush card at 5k for easy, I feel like it's always a little bit overshadowed by Zoro, even though like this is like easier to use in general. This has like every trait that matters, and like, oh, it doesn't have straw. It does not have straw hat. That's the one thing that you're missing here, I guess. Even though like he does spoilers, Jinbei becomes a straw hat later in the show. But I do like the addition for this because it is a little bit more flexible when it's in your hand, because it can become a 1k, and the 2 event cost is easy, especially since you can boost it with the Silver's Rayleigh as well. So I don't have much more to say about these, but it is cool to see Silver's Rayleigh. It was one of my favorite decks to play in OP12, and cool to see that it's still doing at least playable in this format as well. So we've got 3 decks left, and these are all single copies of some unique ones. So we do have Benjamin with their build of the Zoro and Sanji, and this has gone like a little bit of not maybe a resurgence, but like a maybe like a silver period. I don't know what the best way to say it, but people are playing this deck at like higher ratios and finding more success than they've really found in the past, right? Zoro and Sanji is a really specific leader. The fact that it has this Dawn ×1 when attacking once per turn, you may return one of your characters the cost of 2 or more to the owner's hand to set up to one of your characters 7k power or less as active. So there are some ways for you to attack more than once, and we do have a new card from this set, which is the 6-cost Luffy, which just reaches that 7k where you're able to attack with it twice with double attack. which is really, really intimidating. We haven't really been able to have a way previously where this is a real tactic that can happen, right? And you can make it 7k on the first attack, restand it, and then you can add Dawn or something to make it even bigger on the second attack. So the fact that you also like get 4 Dawn active when you play it is really nice. There's a lot of ways for recursion. The new 4-drop Zoro works really, really well in this deck too. Just being able to have like a active card at the end of your turn that your opponent might have a hard time to interact with. We have a lot of cards that just end up working well with it. We have like Perona that you get to use the search for because we do have the slash attribute as well as the strike attribute. We have our top end of like the Karamazatsu, the Trafalgar Law, and obviously the Hody Jones, which we can't get the restand on this one because it is an 8k base, but the rest of the deck has just a lot of great synergies for it. So this is a deck that I haven't sunk my teeth into, but there are just like a lot of cool interactions for it. I think this is a really fun deck to play, and it's really cool to see that I was able to get a top this weekend. So this is Benjamin's build. Congratulations to their finish there. Next up, we've got Lim, which is Kron's version of the deck here, and this did also get a little bit of a resurgence for 2 kind of big reasons. The first reason, actually maybe like 2.5 for it. One, this 10-drop Shanks, you guys probably know the interaction with the leader. You can play this Shanks for 10, you get all 10 of your Dawn back, and then you can still use your leader ability for 3 and still play something off of it. I know the text is not really like forward with saying that you can do that, but you can just trust me. That is an interaction that you can and will do in this deck quite a bit. We also do have the Sanji, this being just a great card for helping us on our 6 Dawn turns where we can play this. We get 2 of our Dawn active afterwards, so you play this for 3, and then you can use the other 3 for your Lim effect again. So being able to get another body on the board is helpful for your effects. For, you know, essentially this costing like a 3 cost 7k body is really helpful in this deck too. And then lastly, just the ability that 9-drop Zoro is like probably one of the best, like this is probably like one of the best periods to play this card right now. Like Ace has like an option to get rid of it with a Red Rock. Technically we have ways to interact with it with Emu if they're playing Stussy, which you're going to notice a lot of people aren't really playing that card right now, and even if they do, they are kind of taking a turn off of their 5 outers play to get rid of this, which is already kind of a win for you. So because of that, like a lot of decks kind of have to respect how good Zoro is at like hitting face on the next couple turns. So because of that, we are like one of the best decks to ramp up to it, which is really nice. If you really want to go like hard into this deck, you can play like 1-drop Trafalgar Law, which can search it out, as well as some other cards like your Nami, our Usohachi, as well as our Sanji 5-drop. So there are like ways to like really lean into it, but I do kind of like this medium approach of like, we are going to play Sanji, the Zoro and the Shanks. We do have some ways to interact with our opponent, but also like being able to have like some defensive events, as well as like the 9 Demon Ore 9-sword style Osprey Blades Drawn Dead Man's Game, the Judgment of Hell, as well as the slow beam sword. So honestly, this is one of my favorite decks. I'm going to be doing some playing with it later in the next couple weeks too, and it's cool to see that it has like a little bit of resurgence, especially in a meta where it's a little bit more solidified what the decks you're playing are against. So there is the build there. And to wrap it up, we do have Dangief with their version of Marshall.D.Teach here, and this is a little bit surprising. I think this is a deck that a lot of people weren't expecting to face into this format, but you do have some ways to kind of combat some decks that exist right now. It is a little bit unfortunate that the 5 outers effect is an activate main, so you don't get to turn it off, but there are also some other good like activate mains that exist in this game right now that you can, like, every deck's almost always going to have a couple on plays, so being able to play around that is really nice. So also, because this format is so solidified, if you can know like what the best ways to play against Zoro, Ace, and Emu, you are in a good spot for the majority of the room, right? I think Teach is a deck that does very well when you know what your matchups are. It is like a little bit trickier when there's a little bit more aggressive decks, which I would say that there's not like a really true aggressive deck outside of Zoro, and even then, like, it's not as like maybe aggressive as decks we've seen previously, right? There's also the kind of the thing where you know, when you don't have to play against like a weird like anti-meta deck as often, like Teach just excels because if you know exactly what your opponent's trying to do, it usually has lines or ways to interact with it to be able to counter at. So again, like when in a monolith kind of like format that we have right now, there are chances for a deck like Teach to do well, like we do see from Dangief here. So we don't really have anything new, right? We do have like the 4-drop Shiryu, this card being able to just be a blocker if you need to, and a little bit hard to remove is nice. We do have the VV, which is just like another 1-cost blocker, which is very easy for us to play since we put cards into our trash very easily, and just kind of the rest of the standard tools from the Marshall.D.Teach. So I don't really have much more to say, but I think this is a big accomplishment as well, and congratulations to Dangief for their finish with Teach. So that's going to be it for me. I know that we kind of went through these decks maybe a little bit quicker than we usually do, but again, it's very tough to really like sit on a deck when we kind of have been seeing the cards do well for the last couple weeks already for it. So that's going to be it for me. Don't be surprised if I don't make another one of these videos for a minute, just because again, I want to make sure that there's something new to really kind of talk about, and I haven't really seen much of a shift. I saw like people started playing, they kind of solidified how good Ace, Emu, and Zoro have been, and there hasn't really been a shift since then either. But if there is one, I'd be happy to cover it. You guys will also notice that I will continue to update OP13 on Eggman events, and we're going to transition to OP14 sooner or later, so we'll get more details for that as we get them as well. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and we'll catch you all next time.
Damn it. Damn it.